What's up next?
We have some questions and comments from our podcast and Discord. So if you weren't aware, we do have a Discord. Link will be in the description below. Jump in, say hi. Cool bunch of lads in there. You can sort of verse each other if you like, or ask us questions such as Dancing Duelist has. They have.
Is that an accurate representation of your avatar?
Yes. And then you play the thing on the dual disc because that's the only way to play properly.
Yeah, by monting your cards, you cram it into the dual disc.
I sent my card to the graveyard.
No banish zone, by the way.
You just throw it on the floor.
Yeah, you just throw it. You're good at that.
It's true.
Off the balcony.
Off the balcony.
So Dancing Duelist asks, as time goes on, how do you think Konami will manage to power creep with no set rotations like other TCGs?
Easily.
Konami has to ban / power creep every deck with the next with the next in order to sell product. They've had no problem up until now, so I'm sure they'll
just keep doing Konami. They'll just keep releasing broken stuff, keep banning it, and then release more broken stuff.
I was going to say, because they have a ban list, they could just bring down the power level, but they don't care.
That's literally just what Konami's been doing since they got.
Yes, anyway, but yeah, there's more.
There is a lot more, but I feel like it's all the same sort of question we've already answered, but I'll keep reading.
Yep.
At what point do people stop playing because every set is just busted beyond belief and is forcing players to shell out money at an event at an even higher rate than what they do now in order to simply have a seat at the table? And that the fact that Yu-Gi-Oh! Prizing is arse. Thanks for a mat and a deck box that cost you $5 to make in exchange for the $1,000 I invested into my deck and the hundreds of testing hours I put into this regional prep to top 8 it.
Yep.
Can you ever see, or would you want Konami to revert to a less combo-oriented game style where good players can win games by gaining a series of small advantages over several turns as opposed to combo this, break my board?
Yeah.
That doesn't always reward you for being a better player.
Really quickly, people thought that Construct, being as expensive as it was at the time, was going to ruin Yu-Gi-Oh! And people would stop playing. That was 6 years ago at this point. And the game's more expensive than it ever has been, just by numbers. I don't think that will stop anybody. 2, people will get bored if we go back to a less combo orientated format. The only things I've seen from people about other games so far is that they're too slow, they're too uninteractive, and that's why they don't want to play Yu-Gi-Oh! That is the most common thing I've seen in all my comments, all those comments. I haven't looked at yours.
I don't get comments. All my comments are people bitching about other people.
Yes, but that is the thing I've seen from Yu-Gi-Oh! Players, that it's like, even though literally like that should be the case, but I don't think that's what Yu-Gi-Oh! Players want. So even though
historically it hasn't been.
Yeah, I would love the game to go back to that place, but I don't think it will.
On the topic of wanting a slower, more interactive game state, it's kind of where we are now.
Branded is not a combo deck.
Yeah, Branded's not a big combo deck. It's very much like a manage your micro interactions deck. Essentially, it's like
it is a lot of very small incremental
resource.
Plays. Like the benefit is that like it's not like a 1400 attack monster that you get to attack with once. That does set up big things, but it's very small advantage gains over time. The other thing is too, if the pace of this game is not for you, there are, as Blake said, other games that you can play
and all the
that are
formats of other games. Yeah.
Exactly, that you can play that are far more rewarding to those types of game styles. So you can by all means play those games. You can, and the other thing is too, you can play the decks you like in this game. That's one of the biggest benefits of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that unless your deck was super busted, it's still playable.
Can I just get really quick, because you two are branded players. I do feel like though, if you don't do something really significant turn 1, you definitely lose. Like you lose if you have a bad turn 1.
That's like that with every deck.
But that's the point. That's kind of, like, I think by what that is, it's not saying. The question isn't combo decks. The question is this game revolves around doing a bunch of stuff really quickly to kill your opponent immediately.
We passed that in like 2009.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Dark Arm Dragon released.
Exactly.
If you had a bad turn 1, you were just behind in resources.
And exactly what I'm saying. That's
just the function of card games. If you have a poor turn 1,
that's not true. That's a function of Yu-Gi-Oh. That's not a function of Magic.
If you don't have any mana, turn 1, if you don't have any mana to put down, you are well behind your game state. In Pokemon, if you have...
But this isn't... But that's not... It's
basic,
not... I don't think that's anywhere near the same. That would be like you opening 5 hand traps in Yu-Gi-Oh! But you can still open a normal combo in Yu-Gi-Oh! And if your opponent has gone first, you aren't winning the game. It's not about... It's not about like opening nothing. Like opening no land is opening nothing.
Between like a big heavy combo format and what we're kind of in now. Like, in a big, heavy combo format, if your opponent opens well and they throw literally everything at the board, they're going to build an unbreakable board.
They've got
Like,
Savage
that's-
fucking thing.
Like, you don't even have to rewind that far to get to those types of boards. Like, if you just go back to Adamancipator, those boards were fucked. Like, literally, you'd have to open a 3-card thing to beat the board. And even then, you don't have the resources to then win.
But I don't think that's that different. I don't think it's different at all. I don't even think it's close to different.
I think there's a massive difference between your opponent going full combo and you breaking.
Sure, but what I'm saying is, if it doesn't, the game ends the same way. The game ends in, I didn't fully break your board, I'm going to lose now.
Yeah.
Even though I don't care if it's just a Mirror Jade.
Yeah.
If I don't fully get rid of the Mirror Jade, I'm then going to lose on the backswing.
That's just the interactions of modern Yu-Gi-Oh!
Exactly, and that's exactly my point.
That's
where I go,
what
well,
the card game is.
I think the type of gameplay he's talking about, which is a mid-range build resources. I don't think this is this game for that.
So that rotates in. Like, there are Yu-Gi-Oh! Formats, again, like I said at the start, this current format is shaping to be something like that. There are formats that rotate in where that is the style of play. And that is something that will exist. Yu-Gi-Oh's a constant game that's in transition and flux, where every format will be different from the last in some way. It may not feel like the current format's all too different from the previous format, but it's dramatically different from the format before. Like, you will go through waves where, like, as the ban list progresses and you see power creep goes up and then it gets checked, you swing down into a mid-rangey, not control format, but a mid-range format, and then power creep starts to creep in again, and eventually you end up with, like, an absurdly broken deck. On the side of the game being expensive, Yu-Gi-Oh! Isn't expensive if you're on top of everything. Like, as a card game, fundamentally, it's not expensive if you're prepared. Like, I lucked my way into Branded, where I had just been picking everything up because I thought Despia was cool. And I picked up my Alubas for $25. And I picked up my fucking... When Chimera got announced, I was like, well, I'll just pick up some Chimeras when they're on the cheap. And then the structure deck's been announced. This card's gonna be expensive. Let's get it now, and I'm covered for later. People all of a sudden just ignored that fact, and then the structure deck's come out, and then Duck's selling his deck for $800 because he's got everything. It's like, if you were paying attention and actively picking up cards over the past 8 months, you'd be in the situation that me and Jake are in, where we own the whole deck, and we've probably spent like $200.
Do you think it's not expensive? At what level? At the level that you can go to YCS and do well, or at the level you can go to locals and do well? What level don't you think it's expensive at? Because if you say a YCS, you can't get around paying Sword Soul price.
No,
you couldn't. You're paying $1,100 for that deck.
Deck building is very important. And you don't have to walk into the room and have a playset of Forbidden Droplets. If you're playing a deck that doesn't require the Forbidden Droplets, you can't put Forbidden Droplets in every deck. You can put it in some decks, and like you couldn't put it in a Flundereese and be like, I'm gonna discard 3 birds from my hand to negate my opponent's 3 cards.
Yeah, and then
that's just not feasible.
Function.
That's not how that works.
Yeah.
You don't need every expensive card to play every deck. If you're a good enough deck builder and there's a deck that you like and you can fully understand your interactions and everything like that, it is still a skill-based game.
Sure, but I agree with you, but this doesn't subtract from the fact that if you go every format since 2010, the best 3 decks have cost more than every other card game in existence.
That's just how it is.
But that does mean Yu-Gi-Oh! Is expensive. As a statement, it means Yu-Gi-Oh! Is very expensive as a hobby. Yeah. Like, that doesn't... And it doesn't shun the issues that it has in printing that they could fix because the secondary market doesn't make them any money. They could fix that for us, and they don't.
It's just the way it is. It's the way it always has been. And there's no point complaining about it today when you didn't complain about it 3 years ago.
And what I'm saying is, people were saying, the game's dead, it's too expensive. Back in contract format, and it didn't get fixed, and we kept playing it, and that's the world we live in now. We live in a world where...
The game was expensive before that.
It absolutely was. But the first time I remember people being like, boycott the game. Get rid of it. And I was like, sure, guys, And I stopped playing for a while, and guess what? Everyone kept playing, and everyone kept paying the prices they were paying, and now they're paying even more prices, and that's where we're at. And we're at that because we're just going to keep paying for prosperities, for droplets, for cards that aren't essential.
Something that's important to think about, I mean, you just hit the nail on the head, is that cards that are key to your deck now are not expensive.
The archetype cards have been cheap for
Archetype
ages.
cards are relatively cheep.
Yeah.
Sword Soul was probably the first one in a while that was expensive.
Yeah, that's an exception. I
But
think,
even then, you were winning with Protoss, which was $4.
Yeah.
That deck was helmet as fuck.
If Protoss had come out in like 2014, Protoss itself would have been Ultra, and it would have been $80.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. That's the thing though. Like in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, the deck itself is not what's expensive. It's what you fill it with, and if you're just patient, that stuff gets reprinted.
Yep.
That stuff gets reprinted.
Extra desires, all these big pop cards that were super big money.
And you mentioned it before, it depends entirely on when you invest in stuff. If you invest in stuff early, like granted Ben and I got lucky in that it ended up being that Despia was like going to be the meta swing in the end, but we picked up that deck because we liked it, and we paid like maybe 140, 150 for the entire core, which ended up being the cost of a single Aluba. So you can either buy the stuff early and get the value from it, even hand traps and stuff. If you buy your ashes for $100 at the start, like I did,
oh my god, Ashes might be the best value card I've seen in this game.
100%, and that's the thing with
still,
most to all staples. If you buy in early, yes, it's expensive. No one's doubting it's expensive, but you look at the value you get over those cards over time. You make your money back 3-4-fold in rewards that you get from winning.
Like, yes, there's small rewards at regionals, but if you spent that money on the deck, you will beat 75% of the scrubs at your locals.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like,
Without
you
even
can
thinking.
have a 30-man locals, and if you've got 15 full-blown I've-topped regional competitors at your locals,
Sure, man.
you might have trouble getting into top 8 or going X1 every week.
Sure.
But if you just have a normal locals where half the players in the room are taking it seriously and half the players in the room are like not taking it seriously, you'll do fine with that deck, and your weekly winnings will eventually accrue what you get. Like, whether it be an OTS, you're pulling ultis, you sell the ultis, you get the store credit.
And I think part of that is that people focus so much on what they're buying it for, like the price wise, rather than thinking of the value that they're getting.
Yeah.
Like, if you think about the amount of time that Ash has been out, and if you'd been like, if I wasn't playing Ash until X point, I would have lost so many more games than I actually did, and I might have saved, say, $80.
Yeah.
And it's not worth the misery, the fucking like shit feeling you have of like, I didn't win a single game of my locals today because I got hand trapped the fuck out of, and I didn't have anything to do the counter swing. And that's been the thing in Yu-Gi-Oh for as long as off-turn interaction has existed.
And I think that you said that one of the big parts about this game is that if your deck wasn't cracked out of its mind, in Pendulum, for example, has started to come back, you can play a lot of your decks for a long ass time. I think the advantage to Pokemon is that it's, even at a meta level, cheap as piss. But the disadvantage is, in 8 months, you're going to be playing a different deck. If you have like a brain where you go, I don't like doing the same thing for 3-4 months at a time, I'm sure that's for you. But if you have an archetype that you really love and you want to make it good, and you want to, Loz is a great example of this. Loz has not done poorly at locals.
No.
That deck is not good. Like, DM as a deck is not good.
Yeah.
You can add staple cards if you pick them up at right times to average decks and make decks consistent and good. It's a thing you can do.
And that comes back into the deck building side of things. Is like, you don't have to play the absolute best deck in the room to be able to win.
just the nature of
Pokemon
the
can
game.
be like that.
Yeah.
Like, there is a case of like, oh sure, like staples and stuff are cheap, everyone can play them, they're all very generic. But at the same time, like a dude who's playing like a literal Bulbasaur deck can't beat fucking Arceus and shit like that. So there is a point where, at least in Yu-Gi-Oh, that you can put in really good staples, think about the decks that you're likely to verse, counter build to
Especially
their
with a side deck, a good side deck as well.
a good side deck, and even
good side
just
cards are cheap.
a good counter build to whatever you think you're going to verse, rogue play, whatever you want to call it, to then do better. Like, and it's going to sound like abuse, so I'll apologize in advance. I'm sorry that your Blue Eyes deck from 2016 isn't quite good enough to compete with stuff today. I'm sorry. But if you build it correctly, it can do well enough.
Andrew
that you
topped
can
the
get
YCS and was the only Blue Eyes player in the top 300 people.
Exactly.
It happens. Like, he did.
I feel like that's an exception.
It is an exception, but
Blue
that
Eyes
was like
in a very good
commendable place of work.
Yeah.
Where, like, sure, you could have asked people what the best deck is.
Yeah. At that point in time, Blue Eyes was very good.
Yeah.
In consideration to the other decks in the room, Andrew liked that deck. He knew that deck very well. Andrew's a very good deck builder, a very knowledgeable player of the game, studies his interactions, and could pilot that to success. Your regular, I like Blue Eyes, back stone
player.
together for fun
Yeah.
player, just doesn't know those interactions and doesn't study the meta enough to know how to properly deck build, follow their lines of play, and go from there. Andrew is a good player who knows those things ahead of time and knows I'm playing against this is my interaction here. And he hit that deck at a good point in time where it was coming. Like, that deck won Worlds 4 months earlier. You can't say that that's a bad deck.
Well, I think Worlds is weird, but I don't think it's a bad deck at all. But can I pose this to both of you, because it's a very weird question you brought up, like the Pokemon deck winning. I think the actual big crux of Pokemon is that the better player wins most of the time, and that can be really hard for people. So what do you think is a good balance of the better player wins because they deserve to, because they put time and effort into their deck, versus everybody should have a chance? Because I know players who are who play atrocious decks in Pokemon, and they will go 10-1-1 at fucking regionals because that's the way the game is.
So that's an exception that Pokemon has, in the fact that every Pokemon deck is ultra consistent. That's where you make
but that's hard on new
consistency.
players as well.
Yeah, that's the thing. Again, when you can effectively toolbox your entire deck in a card game, skill will rise to the top. Yu-Gi-Oh cannot afford to do that, because if you facilitate that in Yu-Gi-Oh, you've been FTK'd, the game's over.
Yep.
Yeah.
And people will do it to you all day.
The game has too high of a power ceiling to just be like, here is the ability to search your entire deck. Like, yes, there are cards that can search your entire deck, but that's 3 out of 40 cards. You're not going any Pokeball into any Pokemon that gets you anything.
Yes.
Like, Arceus says, add two cards.
And
you
don't show them.
Reveal them.
Nope.
It's just get
But
two
do
cards.
you think there's a balance of, like, giving new players a shot where if they open well and they know their deck enough, they can get over the top of a player who knows the fucking deck 50 times over?
The problem is, you said new player there. Like,
Even
Yu-Gi-Oh
I would
is
say, like,
far
less
too
experienced
complex.
player. Say like a rogue player. Say like a tier 3, tier 2 player. Yeah, say like a rogue player.
That situation can arise.
Yeah.
Where if you hit, again, the right deck at the right time. If you look, like, personally, this is how I kind of ramped up into the game, where I was very much a rogue player around Zoo format time. Going into Zoo format.
Hard time to be a rogue player.
Yeah, going into Zoo format, though, I had Paleo. And Paleo was a good counter to Zoo. And all of a sudden, I went from doing all right at locals to winning locals from time to time. I very much shot up when all of a sudden my deck was good. I understood how to deck build in the current format, and that's where you start to see that development. I was probably a year and a half back into playing the game, and I'd finally gotten my head around the complexity of the card game, because it has a lot that I had to relearn about the way the game functions. And that's when the uptake happened.
I do think it probably has the highest barrier, not barrier to entry, but this, like, the floor skill wise is actually quite high compared to most other stuff.
The requirement of knowledge for Yu-Gi-Oh is much higher than you need for any other game.
Like, I've just gotten back into playing Pokemon now, and it's like,
I can do this.
Here is my deck. I can search any card anytime. Cool. I just need to know my interactions. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Away I go.
Yeah. And yeah, you again touched on it. I was in a similar position to Ben. I played fucking terrible decks for the longest time. But again, once you get into the rhythm of things in terms of how decks worked and things, you build around what you can. So part of that is people just want to play what they like. That's fine. that does need to come with the acceptance of the fact that sometimes your deck that you like won't win.
I'm literally doing it with Flunder right now.
I walked into
it's
my
fun,
first locals coming back and was like, oh, I wonder how my pretty much season 5 Yugi deck is going to go.
And you were like,
and I got
fair call.
fucking destroyed. I had one player who is terrible at the card game, no longer plays, was just playing Phantom Knights and was like, haha, you can't activate your effects and you can't attack. I'm not going to kill you. I'm just going to make you watch me do the combos that I like to do.
He told me about this the other
This
day.
man is my mortal enemy.
So he fog plays down your board and then just does a bunch of combos.
Yeah, but doesn't actively kill me.
Yeah.
Just wants to do the combos that he can't do against every other player in the room.
Because anybody else would go, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he told me about this. And I was the same. Like, I remember the very first day that I came into our locals, I versed Bragg's at the time girlfriend. She was playing full power Shadol. I was playing a bullshit amalgamation of agents.
Good.
The best play that I had was summon Hyperion, pop the construct, and poke for damage. That's the best that I could do. And she's like, oh, okay. Shadol Fusion, do the thing. So, like, again, it comes with the expectation that if you're playing a not so great deck, there will come a time that you can't beat the best deck of the game. But
You're not
at the
gonna
same
be
time,
playing that against that deck in all locals. That's something you got to consider as well.
Yeah, and
Every matchup is different.
yeah, and the good thing about locals is if you're in a local tournament setting,
Make friends.
if you, there's make friends, gain knowledge, gain cards to get the deck you like, all that kind of thing. But the other thing is too, it naturally gets you to play against people that are typically at your level. So then you get to play a little bit more, you get to interact a little bit more, learn a little bit more. The other thing I was going to mention too, he's mentioned about pricing and stuff. I won't read out the thing because it's, again, just the thing about pricing. That has been a thing in this game for quite a long time. It's Konami's policy not to give out money. It'd be great if they gave out money.
Pretty much since the beginning of the game.
I want to check because I remember like a weird conversation that happened between like at Worlds or something in like 2017 but like their policy wasn't no money. Their policy was, if we give out money, this is classified as gambling or prizing, and we can't guarantee that to people under the age of 18, so we're not going to do it.
Yeah. Because Dragon Duel stops at 14, you have that 4-year age gap where it would be illegal to play the card game.
You can't give prize money to minors.
But how does Pokemon get around that?
They don't. You get a scholarship.
Masters. 18 and above.
Under 18, you get scholarship money.
So
your parents get the money as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in theory then, all they would need to do is bring the limit of Dragon Duel from 14 to 18 and have standard play 18 and above.
Your only problem is then, again, in Yu-Gi-Oh! There is, again, like we mentioned before, high complexity to the game. The 17, 18-year-olds would fucking dominate the 10 to 12-year-olds.
Pokemon randomly has 3.
There's only so much Charlie Fox playing Skull.
Juniors, seniors, masters.
Yeah.
And they have that bracket because, as you were saying, because it's a game where like the better player tends to win, the top seniors were just like, oh, we get to fly anywhere in the world we want because we go to an event. There's 20 juniors. We win everything. We get every point, and then Pokemon pays for us to go anywhere. And they were like, this ain't flying cheap, so they did cut off like that seniors, juniors, master. Like,
So again, that could be something that they could
do it.
They'd
I don't
have
think
to
they
look
will.
at adding that mid-tier.
Yeah.
I don't think that would impact a great deal of
it's
it.
It's mostly adults anyway. Like, look at a YCS. Yes, there are young kids, like younger guys, but like a huge majority of YCSs are adults.
Yeah,
a huge majority.
You say this, but flashback to probably the last YCS we had in person. Round 1, I sit down. My opponent sits next to me, reveals their playmat of a naked Dark Magician girl, and then their 10-year-old opponent sits across from them.
Yep. Yeah.
Man got judge called on him and got asked to leave.
Another good reason.
Couldn't understand what was wrong.
Another good reason. Just split it.
Yep.
Just fucking let's not do this. Just split it.
Split it.
That by no means does this condone that.
Oh no,
type
that
of
dude
shit.
also get in the
Those
bin.
people
Get in the bin.
fucking suck.
There's
It's
super
convenient
super
that a
producer
certain
Seb.
it's
That
Seb
kind of
sitting
person.
behind the camera that I'm pointing at, so you won't get to know if I'm pointing at the camera to the nonces on the internet or to the nonce on the lounge.
What's our next question? We've been on this question for half an hour.
We have been, however, that is the only question, and
Oh,
that's
that's
why I was
cool.
happy for that to
Ah,
continue on.
I had more rants. I could have continued to rant about that.
Well, please rant on.
Oh, I will say though, very similar to Ben said, especially to rogue level. It bothers me the game is as expensive as it is because there are ways to circumvent and make this better for their players that they're not doing. However, as a hobby, and if you're doing this thing 2, 3, 4 times a week with mates, and you work a casual job, there is room to spend as much money on the game as you want at a low level, a medium level, a high level. If it's something you really enjoy, be smart about where you buy. Look at the reprints coming up. You can afford to invest money into staples and then sell them off when you need to. There's a functional way to play this game at a high level.
Post zoo format, another thing that I just kind of had been picking up and locked my way into, I had full power spiral.
I remember you being like, I have this deck, and I was like,
Yeah, I have this. I won every Nara locals for 2 months straight, and then everyone stopped going. Yeah, I killed that locals. But yeah, so that happens. I go on this massive winning streak. I'm still not playing full expensive spiral. Like, I'm not playing Ash Blossom.
in that deck.
Like, nothing
Ash
was
even-
overly
Ash
expensive.
and Evenly, right?
Ash and Evenly were the two
And
expensive
they're not even
cards.
spiral cards.
I wasn't playing them.
Yeah.
I was playing other cards and literally didn't have problems.
Set up Sleeper Agent.
Yeah, it's
Well-
such a basic mentality to go down.
I guess Super Agents became like a little bit of money. I guess
$20.
Yeah.
It was not expensive.
It got reprinted not that long after too. Like I think it ended up being an OTS Super.
I definitely sold Bragger Super Agent for $80, but anyway, that was before the that was what literally
Didn't
as it
even
released.
do him mates rates.
I didn't know him. That was like as it released, and it was like fucking $70-$80. They were for ages. They were for a long time.
Yeah, I got that deck hilariously cheap and locked into it just being T0. And I was like, cool. You know how you guys were playing Zoo and kind of half beating me half the time? Now I am the one with the meta deck.
Put your fucking brain to use, right?
Yep.
What rarities are splites going to be?
Oh, I think I'm going with extra deck being secret rare, the main deck being ultra.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see it going the way of Sword Soul, where your best stuff's going to be secret, unfortunately. To back up on this as well, so it was Trickstar Sky Striker format. I had competed in Nationals the day before, scrubbed out because I was playing Sky Striker Invoked and it was awful.
Wow.
So
Sounds awful.
because all of my mates were going into Oceanics the next day and I didn't get an invite, I saw that there was a regionals, decided I would participate, and had one of the crowning moments of my YGO career in that I got top 2 in that regional with Metaphys.
Oh yes, you did. Yes, you did.
For anyone who's not familiar, Metaphys is a garbage
Suck.
deck.
And
That
was
likes-
it that time too?
Yeah, it was not meta relevant at that point at all. But what it did have was a very good counter matchup to Sky Striker, because what Sky Striker liked to do was banish your entire hand under Droll and you couldn't play.
Oh, Trickstar, you mean? Yes.
Yeah, or it's Sky Striker Trickstar. It
Yeah,
was
yeah.
Resolve
Yes,
Search.
yes.
You fuck.
Yes.
Resolve a search. Well,
Yes.
I did that
reincarnation.
to someone at that Nats, and like the look on their face, because they were like a new player, and they activated Root Eyes Insight, and then I was like reincarnation Droll, and they were like, so I draw my hand right.
No.
News
That was
for
when I
you.
got back in. Yeah, I literally got back in and Trickstar format. I suck. I play
Yeah.
the worst shit.
Oh, that deck banishes your hand.
I play the worst shit.
But yeah,
anyway.
to my point, so Trickstar liked to banish your hand under Droll, you couldn't play. What Metaphys like to do is banish their stuff and play next turn.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh
Yeah.
no, you banished my Necroface. Banish some more.
Banish. Level.
So that, I realised it too late. If I'd known about this
Would've played it for
interaction, I would have 100% played for Nats. Ended up getting second place at that regional. So
A big regional too, especially those events.
it was 32 people.
Yeah.
And like, it wasn't like they weren't playing meta decks. They were the people that scrubbed out from Nats before. So they were all playing, like, all but one of them in that thing was playing Trick Striker. The only person that wasn't was playing Warrior Spam, I think it was. Goki Spam.
That was still a thing at that point.
It was. It wasn't amazing.
I'm so happy I dipped for that format.
was he playing
Goki format
Spiral?
was fucking
I love that
bonkers.
format.
Maybe he was playing Spiral. I think he was playing Spiral.
Okay.
But either way,
Yeah.
I didn't verse him, so I don't know what he was playing. I versed 4 Trick Strikers and 1 Trickstar Mech Knight.
Fair.
Against the Trick Mech Knight player, I sided in Soul Absorption, got up to like 32,000 life points.
Yeah, let's go.
And then he had a whole board full of monsters and I was down to 1,200 by the next turn. I was like,
At that Nats, round 1, I sit down across from my opponent. I look him dead in the eyes. I'm like, I FTK'd you at a regional 3 months ago, didn't I? He was like, yep. I was like, cool. He does standard combo turn 1. It's a Trick Striker Mirror. And then I'm like, activate engage. Search, his reincarnation trolls me. And I'm like, I deserve that.
You know what? Fair enough. Understandable.
hey guys, it's Jake here from Cowboy for Game. Thank you so much for watching. If you've liked what you've seen today, check out the description below. You'll find a link to subscribe to our channel, where you'll find a heap more content.
More content?
More content, so much more content.
Like what?
So much more podcasts, deck lists, and highlight clips like you've seen today.
Subscribe.